In sales, who puts in the first offer, you or the seller? Let's start with Eric Brewer.
So I think this is a hot topic. A lot of people, and there's some outdated teaching out there that would say get their offer first. If you're familiar with sales, there's something called price anchoring that is rooted in human behavior. I think if you allow the seller to give you their number first, it's going to scare you away from giving a true price anchor and starting as low as you possibly should. I'll allow the seller to suggest maybe what they were thinking, but I really don't factor it in to my negotiating. I'm going to drop a price anchor. I've often said in my sales process with our people, you want to have a sales process that earns you the right to start negotiations with an insulting offer. And if you allow the seller to give you an offer to begin with, it's going to make it harder for that sales rep to really, really start low. So I prefer to set the tone and start low without any apologies about why I'm starting there. And I prefer to give the first number, and maybe that's not so popular, but I have a lot of success with it.
All right, let's jump to Steve.
So I have a slightly different approach. I think I think Eric just called my approach the old approach. But I like to have the seller start with the offer. And the reason why is that they have to earn our business, right? I think the idea is they think we're coming over to buy their house with our money, but they have to earn our money with their house, right? They got to buy our money. It's not the other way around. So they've got to earn our money. And so we have them give us their number, and we'll tell them if we're interested or not. And then we're going to have them negotiate against themselves. So we don't really negotiate between their offer and our offer. We're asking them to negotiate against themselves, and then we'll figure out if that's a price we want to pay. Now, if we do that and it doesn't work, then we're going to give the insulting offer, but it's not our offer. It's like, these lowballers like Eric Brewer, they're paying between X and Y, and then have them get triggered by that, and then we'll negotiate from there. But we start off with the seller making their offer first.
Steve, I want to compliment the chess move. Sending a shot after he's answered, so he can't say anything. That's an A1 play.
I have no idea what he just said. Like I don't. They're selling their own house and using my money, and I don't know what just happened.
It's called
there, but I'm not
Eric.
signing anything. I'm just not signing anything. I don't know what just happened.
It's called chess. You'll understand one day.
All right, let's go jump over to
I'm more
CJ.
of a backgammon guy.
So I'm a mix of both Eric and Steve. So I'll tell you the right way to do this. So it's all framing, right? So I believe in the price anchor method, but the thing about dropping a price anchor is the front end of your conversation with the seller should be to get property information, should get the timeline information, motivation information. From there, we're going to give out a price anchor. We already know that's going to be a super low offer. So we're going to frame that price anchor in a way where that decision-making is not on us. It's on our finance manager. This is what we're able to do right now. What information can I get from you so that I can go back to my finance manager and have the opportunity to increase my offer? Because we already know they're not going to accept that first throwout. But you guys have been on the phones. You guys are talking to sellers. You see that sellers are not going to give you some sort of asking price. One way we try to pull that if we can is we'll ask the seller, hey, what do you think the property is currently worth based on all the information you've given me so far? That's generally going to be their asking price. But that's how we like to back into that, is with a clear line price anchor opportunity and setup.
All right, and last but not least, RJ Bates.
I can clearly tell why I'm the king closer. You guys are absolutely terrible at this. I personally think that the lead generation factor plays into this. If I'm cold calling someone and I'm asking to buy their house, I think I need to be the person that makes an offer on that. If it's a PPC lead and they came to us, then they need to tell me what their asking price is on that property. Majority of the time, though, I'm going to want them to throw the anchor in the water first. So to Eric's point, he's talking about anchoring them there. I want the seller to anchor me. I want them to say, hey, I'm at 100,000, because that tells me they're willing to accept 90,000 right out the gates. If I say 75,000 out the gates, they know they can get me up to 85, 90,000. That's just human nature. They're automatically going to think that. And those are just rough example numbers. I don't want Eric to chew me up and spit me out on those. But I think that the lead generating factor plays into the who makes the offer first.
Okay, the voting is now open for the chat. And gentlemen, the floor is yours. I do want to I want to circle back to Steve and Eric Brewer's conversation to begin the round, because it looks like there was a little bit of disagreement with that one.
I mean, I think at the end of the day, like when RJ's talking about, I'm going to hit him at 70 and close at 90, like I close them at 55. So if you want to close $5,000 below their number, then use his philosophy. If you want to buy stuff and make 75 grand on a $50,000 house, which isn't even really possible if you do the math, then use my approach, right? He's saying, I'm going to start at 70 so I can land at 75. Like, that's not negotiating. That's just playing. So when you start the price anchor, if you have the marbles to hit them at 40% of what you think you might be able to pay, I think you'd be surprised at where people would end up. And I don't treat people differently based on the lead source they came from. I'm going to take control of the process and speak with confidence and say, hey, I've seen properties like this being sold for $35,000 to $37,000. I'm going to find out what their number is as soon as I give them a number to respond to, right? So plus the other thing I would say is if that works well for RJ, then that's what he should continue to do. Everybody has their own style. My personal preference is I don't want to be put back on my heels because the seller gave me a number that sounds really high and then not have the confidence to go in at really what I want to pay.
Yeah, I think that, again, like the approach, right? And I think there's respect. There's a sound methodology for each one of our approaches, right? Again, for us, we're looking to have the seller negotiate against themselves. We're having the sellers, we're positioning like we don't have to buy your house, right? Like I said earlier, we're in a big pond. Like there are literally tens of thousands of people that need their seller house right now. Why should I buy your house? Why, you've got to close me, and I'm the one that's looking to see if this is the house I want to buy. And that's the positioning that we use. So that's the reason why we have the seller make the offer first. And if they make an offer that we don't like, we're telling them no versus us making the offer and them telling us no. So that's our approach. That's our methodology. That's the reasoning behind it.
Here's the thing. I don't like negotiating with sellers. We don't pride ourselves on our ability to negotiate. We pride ourselves on our ability to buy their distressed properties. So when I'm calling them, I'm trying to solve their problem by buying their real estate. And so to Eric's point, you're right. I'm not negotiating with them. I'm having them sell me their house. And that's why I like what Steve was talking about, where he says they're earning the right to get my money. They're selling me their house. And you can watch time and time and time again where I've done it, where I don't bring up a number. I have them tell me the number and then I agree to it. And I'm not hitting them. I'm not poking them in the eyeball. I'm just getting it where I need it. And I know that, and I get them there through my sales techniques.
I don't think there's anything wrong with poking people in the eyeballs. If that's what you got to do, don't feel bad about it.
I don't want Eric to be on an island by himself right now, because him and I, it sounds like, have very similar sales processes. I think you can do all the things that you, Steve, and RJ are saying, but I think you can also control the dynamic of the conversation. You can control it by dropping a price anchor, knowing that they're not going to accept the price anchor, but framing it in a way where you can use that as an opportunity to start the negotiation process. Now, RJ, I know you don't like to negotiate. Steve, I know you do like to negotiate. But I think you have to negotiate in this business. I think you have to negotiate, and you can still help a seller by doing so. But you got to control the process. Price anchors work time and time again, man. I think that's the way to go about it.
Yeah, sure. And I think, again, just for emphasis, like the way we like to do this, when we anchor, we're never the bad guy, right? As these other low ballers, this is where they're at, right? I mean, I don't know, like, what would you say if, someone made you an offer in that range? So we may put the number out first if they refuse to give out a number, but it's never our offer. It's just like, everyone thinks that whoever says the number first loses. So we'll say a stupid low number and see how they react to that.
So CJ, just to clarify, you're saying all of your newer wholesalers that are coming in, they should be making the offer before the seller gives them a price.
Yes, man. Listen, you can work through conversation with the seller and try to pull an asking price from them. When I teach my students how to do that. But what you can very easily do is this, RJ. I can have a conversation with you and I can drop a price anchor knowing that you won't accept it. If my target buy point is 70,000, I start my price anchor with you at 50,000. But in that conversation, I'm letting you know very clearly, hey, RJ, this isn't my offer. I don't even get paid, RJ, unless this deal closes. I want to work with you today to figure out how we can close this together. Right now, I'm approved to give you an offer at $50,000, but I think your property is worth much more than that. How can we figure out how to get to the right number and what makes sense for you and as it makes sense for us and it's a win-win situation so we can move this deal to closing? And then you start that negotiation process. But I want to set that realistic expectation up front that, hey, you might want 100, but I'm all the way down here at 40. We're going to have to talk a little bit and get this figured out. Especially right now in a falling market, you're going to have the ability to be able to do this and drive lower numbers more and more.
Hey, Chris, do you get?
So I think one way to do that, that's sort of in line with what Steve said, is rather than an offer, make a suggestion or an observation, right? I've seen, we have public auctions in Pennsylvania, real popular here. So one of the things we'll do is we'll go, hey, a lot of times we find ourselves at auctions bidding on properties a lot like yours. And at an auction, you have someone that's a high bidder, and then you have the seller like yourself that has the right to say no thank you if they're not happy with the offer. I attend a lot of those auctions, and I see people that are normally the high bidder on a property like this around $60,000, $65,000. If you were selling your house at auction that day, would that be no deal? Or would you try and maybe lean into that and see if you couldn't maybe make that deal work with a buyer? So I think that the good way is, because let's face it, it's easy for us to say, negotiate against themselves, price anchor, all that stuff. But particularly when you're doing virtual, like RJ can get hung up on in a split second if they don't like what he has to say. So he's got to be delicate about how he moves in that offer situation so he doesn't blow a good deal trying to get a great deal. So I like making a suggestion or an observation, sort of like what Chris is saying, is like, I think these numbers are sort of like this for other people and homeowners, but I'm not real sure if that lines up with what you were hoping for. So don't make a firm offer and then lose the ability to come up if you decide to do that. Make a suggestion about numbers that you think are in line with that style property and that location, and then gauge their response and go from there.
Last thing, Weasel. I just want to go back to it. I asked CJ that for a reason, and then Eric just wanted to talk for 3 minutes for no reason. So, case in point, I watched CJ. I'm going to give you some PTSD. Remember what happened to you at the Closers Olympics when you talked to that lady and you tried and you went, and then when you price anchored her, what happened? She hung up right in your face. She turned cold on you. Y'all were best friends before.
Her tone changed.
No.
Now, listen, what happens to me is when I would have talked to that lady, I would have said, are you still looking to sell that property? What's your asking price on that property? And which she would have told me, I could have dedicated 3 to 4 minutes from there to see if she was willing to come down. But as a new wholesaler, I'm going to be so much more efficient than you are. I'm going to be able to call so many more leads because you're going to sit there and keep going, and they get hung up on when you price anchor them after you built rapport and framed the question and all the mental mind bullshit that you try to do over 27 minutes. That's why I'm the king. Pat, I'm the winner. Pass
CJ, your rebuttal real quick, and then we'll end this round. Go ahead with
hit him with the buzzer for sure. Because one thing I've learned, Weasel, is sometimes you gotta let people that are wrong have some. Everybody needs a moment in the sun. Everybody needs some vitamin D. And so let's just all pause for a second. Let's let RJ have this particular moment. I see the belt in the background. I'm debating still, RJ, if I want to come snatch it from you or not. But I hear you. I hear you, and we'll let you have your soapbox for the moment.
All right. Great round. That was one of the best rounds, I think, so far of the show. The voting is closing right now, and it looks like with 39%, RJ Bates edges out Chris Jefferson. RJ, I was giving you the floor. I was giving you the extra time because of the voting comment.
How much time were you going to give this guy, man?
I mean, here's the big thing. It was over 80 live votes. So thank you for the chat and everyone that's tuning in for voting and being so interactive. So
the
that
VAs
was
are strong
great.
today.
Yeah, the VAs. They are here. They are in the chat. VoteGate is
Doing
live.
some lead gen.